It's like a blood test for your home.
Right? Yeah, basically.
Hello and welcome to the Handy Women YouTube channel. I am your host, Geraldine Anello. I am the founder of the Handy Women community, which you can find at the link below. It's on Facebook. It's got, as of today, over 70,000 members. It's very exciting because our mission at Handy Women is to empower women with tools. And today I've got a very special guest who's going to teach us about a very special topic that I knew nothing about and that I have strong chances that you don't know nothing about either. Here's with me is Tiffani from Radon Professionals. Hi, Tiffani.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited because what the heck is Radon?
I can't tell you how many times we get that question. But yeah, I'm glad you asked. So radon is a radioactive soil gas. It's naturally occurring. And it's in the decay series of uranium. So as uranium decays in the soil, radon gas naturally comes up from the soil and can get trapped inside our homes, schools, workplaces. And it's the leading cause of lung cancer among non-smokers. The
leading cause of cancer for non-smokers. So that's pretty bad. We don't want to have it.
How do we find out if we have radon? Yes, the first thing to do with radon, I mean, you got to test. There's only one way to know, and you got to test. There's a bunch of different types of test instruments out there, and I can of course recommend some. But yeah, you got to test. You got to start with a test, and then just take it from there.
So are you saying I don't have to hire someone to test it out? I can have a device at home with me to test it for myself?
Totally. Yeah, testing is super easy. Any homeowner, anybody can do it. There's a bunch of sophisticated instruments on the market, but you don't necessarily need one of those. Yeah, you can do it. Most people will start with a 2-day, it's a 48-hour test. And so your starting point. And yeah, there's many different types of test instruments on the market. There's some that are good, some that are not so good. But yeah, it's something that anybody can do. For sure. Anybody can do. Very simple.
Does it test? So you say it's a 48 hours. Like, what does it entail? Do I have to like do things or do I just like?
No, good question. No, that's a great question. So yeah. So one of the very important things about radon testing is because radon, it's a concentration in air. So our goal is to create basically a worst case scenario in terms of your air quality. So the first thing you got to start by doing is you need to keep your house closed up. So you got to close your windows. You got to turn off ceiling fans. And again, we're trying to create a worst case scenario. And you also have to close your doors. Like you can come in and out of your house as normal, but that's where it starts. You got to close up your house so we can create a worst case scenario. And then in a house, let's say you want to test with in the lowest living space. So if you have a basement, you want to test in a basement. I always tell clients, because the testing protocol, you could read through that and you're just going to fall asleep. But the whole idea is you want to test in the breathing zone, right? Like you want to try to create real life conditions for how you use your house. So you don't want to test on the floor. You don't want to test on the ceiling. You want to test in the breathing zone, somewhere in the middle. A bedroom is a great spot because we spend a lot of time sleeping in our homes. So a bedroom's a great spot in the basement or a living room, something like that. Definitely want to avoid kitchens and bathrooms. You can get a false positive if you test in those locations. But yes, in the lower levels, radon is typically the highest. And then I say typically because there's always the 10%, right, that you never know when it's going to happen. but yeah, you test in the lowest living space in the breathing zone. It's a 2-day test. And then the test kits that I'm thinking of right now that most homeowners could do, and they're affordable, easy to set up. You set them up and then you send them to a third-party lab for analysis. Then they send you a report. It's super simple. And most test kits on the market, with these ones I'm thinking of, are around $15 on average, and then you have to pay to send it. So you're talking less than $50 for a test.
It's like a blood test for your home.
Right? Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned homeowners send it out. So does it mean people with homes are more at risk, and me living in an apartment, I can just chill out?
Ooh, great question. No, it's I say homes, probably just, yeah. No, it's any property has potential. So a lot of people don't think about it with like where you spend more time, but your workplace or your schools, daycares, we do testing and mitigation, and I mean homes, all these, we do residential, commercial, industrial, all of the above. So basically, if you think about it, anywhere that we close up a space, especially, you know, in a basement, it's that all there is dirt. There's dirt beyond the walls, but we close up a space, or even in a home that has a crawl space, a lot of times people will put their furnace in their crawl space. So your furnace or your air conditioner. And then this is one thing is, well, especially in Idaho, I'm not too sure how other states, just because we have a pretty cold climate here, but even with like a home that has a crawl space, somebody will put their furnace in the crawl space, right? And your crawl space is a conditioned space in many cases, which means they're drawing fresh air from the crawl space, filtering it and pushing it into your house. And if you wouldn't sleep in your crawl space, like in my opinion, you don't really want that air coming into your house either. And when most people don't think about it, it's like, oh, it's a brand new house, I don't care where my furnace is. You know, you don't think about air quality. It's free. You know, air is free. But yeah, it's very fascinating. So whether it's an apartment, a commercial building, a school, your house, any property has the potential to be affected by radon.
So is this more dangerous for older homes than newer homes?
We get that question a lot. There's a lot of misconceptions with radon, and the quick answer is no. Like any property can be affected. So it has everything to do with literally the dirt, the soil type that is under your house or your property, your building specifically.
Ooh, how can I know the soil type of my home? And if it's a soil that's dangerous for radon or not?
Well, like in new construction, you can test the soil, but the best thing to do, because even if you test the soil and then you build a brand new home, even if you have a tract home or homes that look exactly the same, one house and then the next, they're going to be different just because it's humans that are putting these things together, right? We're not robots, at least not yet. But yeah, you gotta for sure gotta test. You can test the soil, but what I recommend is just do like one of these $15 test kits, do one of those. But there are ways like in new construction that you can build radon out, and that is something that we are encouraging builders and contractors to start building into homes, because I can't tell you how many brand new homes we have to put holes in, and nobody's happy to put a hole in a brand new house.
Okay, so backing up, if I want to buy a piece of land to build a brand new home on it, my first step before I sign the purchase document is test the ground. Yes?
Well, you can, but it's not necessarily going to give you a definitive answer, unfortunately. I do recommend just things just for like environmental purposes, because you never know what was on the dirt before. Was it a landfill? You know, you want to stay educated. But what I recommend if you are going to build a house is build radon out, because there's things you can do during the design that's basically going to build your radon system into your home. So then, well, you don't see it, right? If the radon pipe would be in a wall, the radon fan would be in the attic, versus a retrofit. Unless you want to start cutting sheetrock and tearing a brand new house apart, it gets pretty tricky to chase a 4-inch pipe in a brand new house. So
is this a bigger issue in certain geographical zones? Like, are we more at risk in the US, and what part of the US? Like if I live in Colombia, am I safer, or is this a worldwide thing?
This is a worldwide thing. I don't know the statistics off the top of my head for like international quite as well as I do the US, but yes, you hit it spot on. There are zones, and the EPA has a zone map that's really educational. Zones 1, 2, and 3. For example, the Rocky Mountain states, that's where we live. The Rocky Mountain states are notorious for elevated radon levels, but Colorado, Idaho is, let's see here, Idaho, about 1 out of every 3 properties in Idaho has an elevated level. In Colorado, it's it's closer to 50%.
Okay,
And depending on
if you're watching this and you're in Idaho or Colorado, get your radon checked if you haven't yet.
Just test. Like, it's cheap. It's cheap to test, and regardless of what state you live in, because I'm just more familiar with, you know, this part of the world, because we get more calls. But on the East Coast is where there's been some of the highest recorded radon levels like ever. We've done testing in Idaho, upwards of houses testing over 300, where the action level is 4. So the EPA is what has set what they call the action level for radon at 4 picocuries per liter. So that's just a concentration in air. While the World Health Organization has set a level of 2.7. So anything above that, well, no radon is ideal, right? Like, you know, you don't want any of it. But it's pretty significant. There's some, was it in the East Coast, like 3,500, while the action level is 4. So, I mean, regardless of where you live, what I recommend is test. We in Idaho, we offer free test kits to homeowners, just because awareness is huge, and there's not a lot of people that know about this.
When you say we, do you mean Radon Professionals, or do you mean the state, local state?
So the state does offer free test kits, but we do as well. So we, as in our company, Radon Professionals, we offer free test kits.
Okay, so I do a test for my home and it comes out like 0. I'm not even close to 2.7.
Yeah.
Am I safe and can I sleep, or do I need to test again next year and the following year, or like every 10 years? What's the rate?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. So if your radon level comes back low, let's just say it comes back at 1, because the radon level of 0 isn't necessarily very realistic. Let's say it comes back at
dreamer.
Right.
No, say a dreamer.
Yeah. Hey, well, after mitigation, we can get it close to 0. I'll tell you that.
My dreams have already come true.
But if you test at 1, and keep in mind, radon levels are typically lower in the summer months and higher, lower in the warmer months and higher in the colder months. And I'll explain to you why in a second. But if you test for 1, and let's just play this out and say it's the winter, because in the winter, it should be like a worst case scenario. If you test for at 1 in the winter time, what I'd recommend at that point is a retest every 2 years, or if you're going to modify your home, especially the ventilation, right? Because radon has everything to do with air quality and airflow. So if you upgrade your furnace, or if you have an old home that has like baseboard heat and there's no circulation in your house, those homes especially can have higher levels, just because you're not getting any fresh air. When you think about it, like, winter is long here. Winter is very long here. And we're in our house closed up, no fresh air coming in, and we're not thinking about air because it's free. But so I'd recommend for sure testing at a minimum every 2 years, or if you do modify your home, do a retest just for the peace of mind. And that should keep you good.
I mean, the main moral of the story is move to the beach. Right. Sunny summer all year long. I mean, just for safety precautions, not because you want to, but because you have. That's really
I mean, we do have some clients that live in Hawaii, and they're like, well, they have multiple houses about California, Hawaii, Wyoming. They're like, so are you going to come to Hawaii and do my house? And it is funny because the radon levels are typically a little lower on those beach climates. But this client in particular, he did have an elevated, I can't remember where in Hawaii it is. But stay out. If you can be outside, that's the way to go. Like, beach it up, get your feet in the sand.
Beach it up. Okay, so you said there's a way to build your home right away plan with radon in mind rather than retroactively do it. What are some things that are really like the basics that people should keep in mind to do that?
So one of the most important things when you're building, let's just take a new house, say it's a basement. New house, you have a basement. the most important things you can do is running the radon vent pipe. So a radon vent pipe is typically either a 3-inch or a 4-inch PVC pipe. I'd be happy to give you more details, but I'm just going to try to keep it simple. So if you can run a PVC pipe that goes, let's say, from like your mechanical room, because typically you have a mechanical room in the basement, and then you run a 3 or a 4-inch PVC pipe, keep it in the wall, stub it down into the mechanical room, run that PVC pipe in the wall, and then have its own independent vent through the roof. If you do that, and you do that, and then you also leave enough space in the attic for us to add a radon fan if necessary, that's going to save you miles of trouble. And that passive vent pipe, that's just what the pipe is called, a passive vent pipe, and that's what typically most people do in new construction. That can reduce your radon level by about 50%. Ideally, that passive vent pipe is also going to stub down through the concrete slab in the basement, because the whole idea, right, with radon is it comes up from the soil. We want soil gases to exhaust outside the house before they have a chance to come in. And if you give them a pathway, which is this PVC pipe that goes from beneath your concrete slab, beneath the concrete floor in the basement, and it goes up through the roof, you have a pathway for it. The thing about radon, though, that's tricky is radon is heavier than air and it tends to settle. So you have to have an active force to get it out. Hence why I recommend at least give yourself 30 inches in the attic. That's about what you need to install a radon fan, and you're golden.
Wow. So are radon levels getting worse over time? Like the older the earth gets, the worse radon levels get, simply because uranium like takes a while to decay?
That's a great question. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So radon, like when we have geological activity, you can see spikes. Radon levels in the soil are actually a way that we can predict like earthquakes and volcanoes. Wow. So it's pretty fascinating. We've even done we've done a few houses where a brand new house, right? You have a brand new house, and then there's brand new houses getting built right next door. So on the weekend, you do a radon test where the construction equipment, it's not operating. There's no backhoes, dump trucks, like putting pressure on the earth. Test on a weekend in this house that's already built, radon level might be low. But you test in the week when all these construction equipment's messing with the soil, changing pressures, you can see spikes. And it's really fascinating because we've seen this. We've mitigated a home in a new development, radon level tested low, everything's good. And then so we have new construction starts next door. So you have to compensate for that ground pressure difference, and also any like barometric pressure, because pressure events like the weather also has a direct effect on your radon level.
Like what kind of weather?
So like wind, rain, or snow. On a super windy day, if you think about it, because the earth is constantly breathing, right? The earth is always moving, it's always shifting, and there's soil or soil gases trapped. They're trapped and have to go. Soil gases have to go somewhere. And if you do anything to impede that, the soil gases are going to take the path of least resistance. So like in the winter, the snow load, the ground is frozen, but your house is nice and warm. So soil gases tend to get trapped inside in your house in the winter, especially with the windows and doors closed up more frequently. And you have like a pressure event come through that's just going to push that gas and help it come into your house. That can elevate your radon level substantially. We see, and again, these are averages, so don't like necessarily quote me 100%, but we can see if you test in the summer and say you test your radon level is 4. You test in the winter, it can be 8 to 10, or you can see spikes even higher than that, depending on your climate and where you live. It's pretty fascinating, really.
What do I do if I'm a renter and I tested it out because I want to protect my health, and there's elevated levels of, radon, and my landlord cannot care less and is not aware of it, does not know about it.
We do encounter that. Yeah. So I always recommend, we'd be happy to work with the client and the landlord to help educate. As far as I understand, there aren't necessarily like tons of tenant laws that really encourage it to be required. I think that's a state by state requirement, but even just state, like the EPA has a radon program, but it really depends on your local jurisdiction. So even Idaho, that's where I live, even Idaho, we have a state radon program, but it's up to the city and the county to actually implement that. So I would check with your local jurisdiction to see what your local laws are, because there are, I know, some tenant laws that do enforce that, but I couldn't be certain across the entire US.
But there's nothing I can do on my end that does not require my landlord that still respects the integrity of the property?
There are for sure. So where we live, our climate, like we have all 4 seasons, and winter is pretty significant here. So the thing that airflow, right? So if you open your windows and you get open 2 windows, open 1 window on this side of the house, 1 window on the other side, you're going to get cross ventilation and you're going to get a lot of fresh air. That's something you can do. Also, many people will defer their maintenance on their HVAC system. So if you're one of those people that replace your furnace filter like once a year, you need to think about doing that once a month. Once a month to once every 3 months, depending on what type of filter you have in your furnace. But really, fresh air, opening the windows makes a drastic difference. It can almost cut it down to just non-detectable, depending on what your starting point is. If you're starting like in the hundreds, that is probably not going to work. But if your radon level is on the lower end of this spectrum, but still elevated, opening the windows is going to help a lot. There are also some just mobile air quality units that you can set up. It's like a HEPA filter system, basically, that you can put in your house, that you could buy as a consumer independent of your landlord. But those are a few things. Where it gets tricky is winter, because who wants to keep their windows, get that cross ventilation. But that's a great solution for the warmer months out of the year, or you can get that standalone unit to help with air quality. But it really depends on what the radon level is, and I'd be happy to, on a case by case, to give recommendations for sure. But that would be a good starting point.
And what about the people that think that AC is fresh air?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh gosh. Well,
is it?
It all starts with, it all depends. Like, there are so many different ways that you can design a house that AC isn't necessarily fresh air. Take, for example, what I was talking about with crawl space ventilation. So if your heater, if your furnace, if your air handler is in the crawl space and it's pulling fresh air from this crawl space and then filtering it and pushing it into your house, if crawl space air, at least in my opinion, because I spend a lot of time in crawl spaces, this is not fresh air. Even if you have air vents or, crawl space vents, I mean, there's spiders, there's mice, like every single house has these things. But no, there are things you can do though. If you do not have fresh air makeup, you can add that, and that's something that we can help you with as well. But yeah, that's a misconception for sure. You definitely want to know what type of HVAC system you have before being 100% confident that it is fresh.
This is all wildly enlightening. I'm so glad you could speak with us, Tiffani from Radon Professionals. Yes. You can find Tiffani. If you're watching this, please tell me, had you ever heard of radon before? If you had you ever gotten your house checked? And if not, will you? Tell me your thoughts about radon down in the comments. Make sure to join the community, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye. Thank you, Tiffani.
Yeah, thank you.